We've been watching some devastating images from the hurricane that hit Texas.
And when it comes to natural disasters, the media is often a part of the story, and a big part. Ben Bogardus is a former producer in Texas. You are now a journalism professor at Quinnipiac University.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
Also
having me.
worked here one summer.
That's
yes, I
right.
did. Yeah, filled in as a producer one summer here.
When you look at what's happening in Texas and you see that the media is not just covering it, but is really a major part of that, and a respected part of that.
Oh, absolutely. And it really sort of makes you feel proud to be in the profession, be associated with it, because you see these journalists who are putting aside their journalistic hat sometimes, and they're being human. You know, when you see someone who's trapped, when you see someone in their home that needs rescuing, you can't just cover it with a camera and then go home. You know, you have to get involved sometimes, break that journalistic wall between, being part of your story. And sometimes when you see tragedy happen, you have to respond to it.
Life over deadline.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, human life is worth so much more than getting a story on the air.
And you see in this case reporters and photographers who are helping in the boat rescue effort. Mm-hmm. And it's got to be very scary at the same time while you're trying to do your job and cover it, but you are part of something that's unfolding that's bigger than you are.
Absolutely. And in the back of your mind, you are away from your family, your husbands, your wives, your children, your pets. Journalists have to make plans for them before the storm hits, and then when they're out in the field, they don't know necessarily what's happening in their own home, and yet they're helping other people.
Social media is also changing the way that we view these natural disasters. Someone tweeted a picture a couple days ago of a shark going down a highway of
Fake
water
news.
in Houston, and people retweeted it hundreds of times thinking it was real. Turns out it was a hoax. Mm-hmm. How does the TV stations and how do the newspapers figure out, well, it looks real, but we're not quite sure? People are sending in pictures all the time.
Absolutely. And so if someone sends you a photo, sends you a tweet, first reaction is let's get it on the air. It's new content we can show. But you really have to be careful that what you're putting on is truth. The worst thing you can say in a disaster is something which is misleading or untrue, because lives can be at stake. Things like the shark in the water, that's, doesn't put anyone's lives at risk. But if you say a road is closed or if something is on fire, and it's not, that could have real-life consequences. So you really need to make sure that what you're saying is correct.
And the flood has been devastating for media. One of the TV stations, I understand, was flooded. Tell us about that. They had to
absolutely. During the storm, the water started rising. It came to the first floor and the second floor, and then it started coming into the studio. And obviously, you don't want to be in a place that's starting to flood, but especially a TV station where you have cables running and you have a lot of electricity there just to power the lights and the cameras. It's a really dangerous situation. So they had to evacuate. They did the news from their sister station in Dallas for a few hours a day, and then they moved to a different studio at the University of Houston to broadcast.
Now that the city's starting to dry out and the water's starting to recede a little bit, some of the other stories are starting to pop up, and that is, how did this happen in the first place? And there are a lot of people saying that the media should have been a little tougher on the city of Houston when they were allowing all this construction without any zoning.
Yeah, Houston is an odd city in that there is no zoning. You can have buildings, houses next to skyscrapers. And also there's some criticism about the lack of evacuation, and that actually came out of Hurricane Rita in 2005, where more people died in the evacuation from Houston than the storm itself, because people were stuck on the highway, and the city didn't want to see that again. So they told people don't evacuate, and the flooding has caused more problems.
The mayor was very clear about that at the beginning, because that was one of the complaints. That, had they give people warning to leave, but as you pointed out, that in that case, you had people stuck on the highways
they
for
ran out of
hours,
gas,
and there were accidents and fatalities even before the storm began.
Exactly, and you saw the flooding covering some interstate highways. I mean, imagine if people were in their car stuck on the highways as the water started rising there. It would have been an even larger disaster.
And the zoning star is reading that they allowed 7,000 homes to be built in a floodplain. They said in most states that never would have been allowed.
Exactly, and the city of Houston, too, is also totally flat and mostly paved over. It's the city center where the buildings are is not very big. It's maybe about the size of downtown Hartford. But it's just concentric rings of strip malls after that, all paved parking lots. So when it rains, there's nowhere to go. Even during a normal summer storm, roads will flood in the city, but obviously never to this extent.
Well, Congressman Larson had said previously that hindsight's 20/20, and you don't know how bad things are going to be. Still, what you're pointing out and what others are pointing out is that there are things to learn from, and that you can have construction in floodplains, and because they have had hurricanes there before.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. And Tropical Storm Allison, I think it was 2001 or 2002, did a lot of damage also. That was the previous high water mark for flooding in Houston. And, that was 15, 17 years ago at this point. People's memories, new people have moved in. The city has expanded. So when you have uncontrolled growth and no zoning and a city which is prone to flooding to begin with, it's just recipe for disaster.
What's the future for Houston? I imagine some people will cancel their plans to move there if they're thinking about it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And others might even think about saying, maybe it's time to go. Because this flood could happen again.
Yeah, exactly. You saw that after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, where people left and they didn't return. Ironically, some of them moved to Houston, and now they're flooded out of their homes there too. But it's a matter of people deciding at some point that these storms aren't going to go away, and more people in flood-prone areas, not a good recipe for living a successful life.
And the coverage probably won't go away. I mean, FEMA has said that they plan, this is going to take years to rebuild. And I would imagine the stories and the insurance claims and the homeowners are going to have stories to tell for a very long time. And it will be a long time before they're able to be made whole.
Oh, absolutely. And when your house is flooded, once the water recedes, your furniture is ruined, your walls are at risk for mold, so all that needs to come down. And there's only so many contractors. There are only so many home improvement stores that can sell things to repair your home. So it's going to take a long time for people to become whole again.
One of the side stories that we saw this week, big attention was paid to what Melania Trump wore that night. And she wore stilettos when she left the White House, and then she put sneakers on. But
in that there is a time and place to talk about fashion gossip, and there's not. And when people are dying, when city is under 4 feet of rain, maybe that's not the best time to talk about what the First Lady is wearing. There are more important things to talk about now.
All right, but would you advise against or for designer pumps at a storm?
That is something I know absolutely nothing about, so I will stay neutral.
Ben Bagardis from Quinnipiac University, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
And we thank you for watching this Sunday afternoon, this Sunday morning. Enjoy your Sunday afternoon.
Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Happy Labor Day.